Stay connected all the time.
Connected to you.
Get Spectrum One for Business. One advanced solution with all the connectivity your small business needs for the lowest price. Only $49.99 per month. Call 855-581-6858 today. Spectrum Business. Made to work.
Got some soup for you.
You are loved. You are valued. You are resilient. You got this.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving.
Good evening. I'm Errol Lewis, national political anchor for Spectrum News, and you are watching Spectrum's coverage of the Republican National Convention. It is 8 p.m. on the East Coast, 5 o'clock on the West Coast, and 7 p.m. in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the Republican National Convention is underway. Tonight is day 3, and the theme is Make America Strong Once Again, with a focus on foreign policy. The main event tonight is Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance, who will be introducing himself to the nation when he addresses the convention later this evening and accepts the party's nomination. Speaking before him, Donald Trump Jr. will be here, Trump's eldest son. He's also been one of the most, if not the most, ardent supporters of J.D. Vance. And Vance's wife, Usha, will introduce him. We've got all of that and much more, but there's also news outside of the RNC. The White House has confirmed that President Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. The president has mild symptoms and will be self-isolating at his home in Delaware, according to the White House. And just hours ago, Congressman Adam Schiff became the most prominent Democrat so far, calling on the president to step aside from the race. We've got more on that in a little bit as well, but let's head to the Fiserv Forum right now. Spectrum News national political reporter Taylor Popolars is there. And Taylor, what have you learned about what J.D. Vance is expected to say tonight?
So, Errol, I'm told that Vance is going to use this opportunity to introduce himself to the country by really leaning into his bikes team. That kind of made him a celebrity. It was adapted into a Netflix movie, and it talked about his humble upbringings in Middletown, Ohio, which is in the southwestern part of the state. His family was pretty poor. His mother was struggling with drug addiction. His father was out of the picture. And despite all that, Vance was able to defy the odds. He enlisted in the Marines. He went to Ohio State. He ended up at Yale Law School and then eventually became a U.S. Senator. So I'm told he's going to really lean into that biographical piece and try to link it all to how he feels Donald Trump's campaign agenda and the policies that Trump was able to pursue during his first 4 years in the White House are able to impact in a positive way people like Vance, people that kind of are growing up in situations where they don't have much luck behind them and they're kind of struggling. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see how Vance spins that. I'm also interested to see if he goes on any form of an attack on the Biden administration and the Biden campaign, or if this will kind of be a continuation of the theme of unity. But I'm told that Vance really wants to focus on his biography and show that Trump's policies in real life.
The theme, of course, tonight is supposed to be on foreign policy and America's place in the world and strength. How does J.D. Vance fit into that picture?
So in the 18 months that Vance has been in the Senate, he's arguably become the loudest voice against helping Ukraine as it's facing its war from Russia. And this is obviously aligned with what former President Donald Trump has been speaking foreign policy-wise. Vance has become kind of the go-to person. Despite the fact that Ohio has a significant Ukrainian-American population, Vance talks about his time as a Marine, his time serving overseas in the Middle East, and his frustration with what he calls endless wars and the U.S. involvement in them. So I think he'll be making the case for why he wants America to kind of step back from the world stage in that sense and reinvest time and energy into the country itself. And I think that goes along with making America strong. Vance is also going to talk a lot about kind of the things like fentanyl and the opioid epidemic, things that hit his family ravaging communities across the country, and he feels the federal government is not doing enough. So I think all of that will be intertwined. And again, so much of it links back to his own personal story, which the campaign really wants to put in the spotlight tonight.
All right, thanks, Vic Taylor. We'll be checking in with you a little bit later. Let's bring in our panel of some of the best political commentators in the country. Spectrum News anchor and chief national political reporter Josh Robin is with us, as well as political anchors Jason Fechner in Wisconsin, Holly Gregory in Florida, Tim Boyum in North Carolina, Alex Cohen in California. And Josh, let me start with you. Democrats have criticized J.D. Vance for his positions on foreign policy, including U.S. support for Ukraine. Well, how's that going to work out tonight, I guess, is the real question.
Well, I think that Donald Trump's position on being very skeptical about foreign involvement has really taken over the Republican Party, but it's not taken over it entirely. There's still a lot of tension how robust the United States foreign policy should be, particularly when it comes to Ukraine. And they consider themselves, or came up more under the Reagan era of the party, of peace through strength, and of kind of freedom throughout the world, of that being part of the platform. In fact, it was part of the Republican platform for a long time. I spent a couple hours ago looking over the 2000 platform just to see how far we had gone. I want to read you very briefly, Errol, a quote from that and then a quote from J.D. Vance. Republicans know that the American commitment to freedom is the true source of our nation's strength. So talking about freedom throughout the world being part of American foreign policy. J.D. Vance said not too long ago to the former White House advisor and now podcast host Steve Bannon, I've got to be honest with you, I don't care what happens in Ukraine one way or another. So again, there's a real shift in how Republicans are, and last person in Donald Trump's ear, and that is alarming Republicans here who want more American involvement, particularly when it comes to protecting Ukraine from Russian aggression.
Okay, very interesting insight. Now, Jason, Senator Vance is from Ohio, one of the so-called Rust Belt states. You're nearby in Wisconsin, another Rust Belt state. Does his story and his upbringing in Ohio help the ticket with voters there in Wisconsin?
Well, the story is surely going to resonate with a lot of people across the blue wall, if you will. Roughly 7.5% union membership in Wisconsin, nearly double that in both Michigan and Pennsylvania. Vance, of course, a populist. That private sector union support out there should resonate with a lot of Wisconsinites. And earlier this week, Reuters actually talked to union members at the CNH plant just south of Milwaukee in Racine, where they manufacture tractors. A lot of those jobs are about to be outsourced to Mexico by 2027. And they said endorsed Biden. Their actual membership there, the local 180 union shop, is pretty well split between both Trump and Biden going forward into November. So it's kind of a sign of that break in that traditional support that Democrats and President Joe Biden, who has said he's the most pro-union president in history, have definitely enjoyed. Whether or not Vance can kind of sway those independent, undecided voters out there, we'll have to wait and see. And to that end, in a state like Wisconsin, which has been within the margin of error, and pardon my very rudimentary graph here on how polling has gone in Wisconsin, basically Trump and Biden like this for months, unending. Nothing has really shaken it too much. And the latest Marquette Law School poll here in Wisconsin as well shows that when all the candidates are in the mix, those who are undecided, it's about 0% in the Badger State, a very tight margin out there. But those who are not at all excited about their candidate or not very excited about their candidate, that's up at 33%. So they're and Vance going forward right now. Kind of fascinating to watch. Everyone has been locked in about their feelings about both Biden and Trump for months on end now, despite these seismic events that have happened out there. So it'll be interesting to see what he's got to say tonight and whether or not it could sway any of those small number of undecided voters out there in Wisconsin and across the rest of the Rust Belt.
Okay, and now so Holly, there's reaching out to the undecided, and then there's the party faithful. Does this nomination make J.D. Vance the future of the Republican Party?
That is certainly Trump's intention here, and I believe that Trump has remade totally the Republican Party in his image, and his pick of J.D. Vance for a vice presidential running mate is really proof that Trump is feeling confident about that, because this is a legacy pick. This is about Trumpism after Trump. And I think what the former president sees in Vance is a way to give intellectual voice that J.D. Vance has to MAGA, to eventually expand it. But in the meantime, it also is very appealing to the base, because he has that great backstory that we've heard about. He didn't get anything the easy way. He had to work for it. He's got the strong military record that is so respected by the people in that room at the RNC. So This is about the future of MAGA, and he is a young man, and he is being picked to carry that torch. Now, I will say, if there's any hand-wringing at all in the party over Vance, it's that there's a worry that he's not going to do anything to bring back suburban women who turned away from Trump in 2020, particularly with his harsher stances on abortion over the years. And so I think Trump is confident that he doesn't have to worry about that right now. That's why he has picked Vance, and the Republican Party is feeling very confident right now. But still, as Jason was just saying, this has been a very, very close race throughout.
Yeah, and for our viewers, Holly, we should be clear. Nothing that's going to be said by J.D. Vance, or frankly anybody else, has gone without being closely vetted, almost literally word for word. I mean, it's in a teleprompter. These are tightly scripted, tightly controlled speeches. So every word that he says tonight is going to, I guess, resonate or be directed one way or another toward the issues that you're talking about.
Oh, no question about it. Everything that they do at these conventions, all the way down to who sits next to the president in these high-profile moments, like when he walked out, J.D. Vance was with them that first time, and also on his right was Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. You know, it's all an indication of who is part of the MAGA movement now. Everything is very scripted. You had Florida Senator Rick Scott, who is running for leadership of the Senate to replace Mitch McConnell, the other two people who are taking roles, at least as of yet. So maybe there's something to read into that. And yes, every word of what J.D. Vance has to say tonight is going to be dissected, and it's certainly going to be dissected by his opponent, who he spoke with on the phone recently, Kamala Harris, who came out. She had things to say about him today in an advertisement saying, you know, basically he is just going to be, I believe Biden called him a clone of Trump. She said there's not going to be any difference. J.D. Vance is going to have loyalty only to Trump, you know, and not to the American people. So the battle has already begun between the two of them, and everything that he has to say tonight is going to be scrutinized up one side and down the other.
Okay, and Tim, let's pick up on that. Vice President Kamala Harris has accepted 3 dates for a debate against J.D. Vance. The 2 original vice presidential debates were July 23rd and August 13th. Now CBS is offering August 12th, and Harris has accepted that date as well. But now here's how they're saying, we don't know who the Democrat nominee for vice president is going to be, so we can't lock in a date before their convention. To do so would be unfair to Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Gretchen Whitmer, or whoever Kamala Harris picks as her running mate. So there's a lot to unpack here. I guess, you know, we've tried not to dive too much into the ins and outs of what the Democrats are up to. We're going to get into that when their convention rolls around in a few weeks. But what do you expect to happen in this matchup if and when it happens?
Yeah, I mean, classic trolling there, I guess, by the Republicans with this. I obviously, I think there's a couple things potentially going on here with the Democrats. First of all, they feel very confident that Kamala Harris could do well against J.D. Vance in a debate. You know, he's just got into politics in the last couple of years. He does not have experience on a debate stage to the level that Kamala Harris would have. They believe she has a much more J.D. Vance would have. But maybe there is something else going to this, that they want this idea of getting her out front more for the potential that maybe Joe Biden doesn't know. Maybe that is going, you know, you don't want to guesswork here too much about what's happening, but I do think there's an urge to get her out in front of Americans much more on that front. And I do think that they think that J.D. Vance is backing out of this, that they don't want to debate her because they believe she has such a command of the issues. Now, she has her own issues, not only within America, you know, when it comes to polling, but even somewhat within her party. You know, there's some that if Biden did drop out, that they don't necessarily want her to be the nominee either. They want to open it up. But I do think there's a push to get her out front, and they believe that she would win these debates clearly.
Okay, so now let's go out to California. Alex Cohen, let's talk more about President Biden. He just tested positive for COVID, and then earlier today, a new AP NORC poll, nearly 2/3 of Democrats are saying the same, that the president ought to drop out. How does this impact his campaign?
You know, it's a really interesting question, Errol, and especially Adam Schiff's role within it. You know, we've been talking for a while now about the fact that Democrats who were down ballot in vulnerable areas have been really concerned that with questions being raised about Joe Biden's ability to run and to serve, people might just sit home and not vote at all. Adam Schiff does not in any way, shape, or form fall into that category. He has dominated this race for U.S. Senate against former Dodger Steve Garvey. But I think there's one more factor to consider here, which I haven't seen folks talking about. But if you were listening to speeches earlier tonight, including trade advisor Peter Navarro, who worked for Donald Trump, who literally just got out of prison to attend the RNC and said to that is a real concern for Adam Schiff. Let us not forget he led the first impeachment inquiry. Donald Trump has no love lost for Adam Schiff, and I think there's a genuine concern amongst Schiff and many other Democrats that if Trump wins, who knows what happens to them and their freedoms going forward. And I don't think that's too histrionic of a concern to be worried about. The real question is, as this drumbeat continues, does President Biden listen? And especially now having COVID, some would say, he said in an interview not that long ago, if he received a diagnosis of a serious medical condition, he would consider. And there are impacts of COVID on the memory and ability, especially when you're an octogenarian. So tonight could be a real game changer.
Okay, well, you know what? Let me go back to Milwaukee, where Taylor Popolars, I believe, has some new reporting on this very question about President Biden's plan.
Well, so Errol, what's interesting, our colleague Kevin Fry, who covers New York's congressional delegation, was able to get a statement from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer denying a report that initially surfaced in ABC News that talked about Schumer visiting the president over the weekend and basically saying to him, you should bow out of this race because it's not looking good for you. And I just want to let me pull up this statement real quick that came from Schumer's spokesperson. They told Kevin Fry, unless ABC's source is Senator Chuck Schumer or President Joe Biden, the reporting is idle speculation. Leader Schumer conveyed the views of his caucus directly to President Biden on Saturday, so we know that the two men met. I can tell you that here at the Republican convention, there's kind of a mix. People are very critical of Biden, and they feel that he's not mentally fit for the job and competent enough for the job. At the same time, though, they would love to see Trump face Biden in November because they think they have kind of the wind at their back and that it will, produce a Trump victory. So I think it'll be interesting moving forward if there is movement within the Democratic Party, just, what it could mean for a much different challenge for the Trump campaign than one with him.
Okay, thank you for that update, Taylor. Let's head down to the convention floor and check in with our roving reporter. Rhea Diamante is with the Ohio delegation right now. And Rena, what are they saying about their hometown guy?
Well, Errol, I don't think there is any other delegation more excited than the Ohio delegation. Joining me now is State Senator George Lang, who actually represents Senator Vance's hometown, and his wife, Debbie Lang. I mean, you must be very excited that Senator Vance was chosen as former President Trump's running mate.
We are absolutely thrilled. Words just can't express being a part of this. When we heard he was the VP pick, it was astounding. Everybody there, people were crying, people were cheering. It was so magnificent.
And for those of us that are from Butler County, where JD grew up, the excitement, the energy, and because JD's going to bring what he learned in a small town, in a small impoverished town, and the opportunity that anyone in America can achieve anything they want if they're willing to work for it, if they have faith. If they have a loving family and a belief in God, anybody can achieve whatever they want. He's proof positive.
You all must be incredibly excited to hear him tonight. He is the main speaker, rounding everything out. What do you hope to hear from him?
I really want to hear how he's going to talk about the border. These stories are heart-wrenching. What we heard from that mother last night, from one instant of her son just getting one pill of fentanyl and dying, I can't imagine. This elderly couple that just went on stage living on their ranch and all of those illegal aliens coming in through her home, it's just sad. We have to do something about that, and that's my biggest issue that I want to hear.
Given his background in business, he understands the negative impact taxes, regulations that government has on a business's ability to achieve a profit. And remember this, when businesses flourish, citizens prosper. And J.D. Vance will work with Donald Trump to make America prosperous again.
And my last question for you two, how do you see Senator Vance's role in this campaign? What do you think he'll be doing, and what do you think will be his need?
I think he'll be extremely active. And I think he's going to be our next president after Donald Trump, because that's how effective he's going to be. He's the American dream. I mean, from all levels. He started from a very low background, and now look where he is. It's amazing. I mean, he is the real American dream, and that's what I think I'm going to see.
And for me, he's going to inspire our youth. Our party's white guys, and he's going to bring the youth in, because we are the party for everybody. We don't care your race, your religion, your sexual orientation. The Republican Party is the party of inclusion, and he's going to bring those young people in.
George and Debbie Lang, thank you both so much for your time. I appreciate you chatting with us. Thank you so much.
If you've read his book or seen his movie, if his grandma was still alive, Meemaw would be proud.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. And so really that's what we've been hearing a lot from the Ohio delegation. A lot of Republican delegates here at the convention arena. You know, they point to how Senator Vance could truly be the future of this party, and I think it's certainly clear what his where his ambitions lie. Errol.
Okay, thank you, Rena. There'll be a lot of cheering for J.D. Vance. They'll be cheering a little extra hard in that section of the convention floor. Let's check it down for an interview with the co-chair of the RNC. Michael Whatley is his name. What did he have to say?
Well, Errol, we talked about a number of different things, but we got into an issue that is so critical considering what we saw play out after the 2020 presidential election and what we are seeing play out again going into November with former President Donald Trump sowing doubt about the election proceedings going into this election. Yesterday, in an interview with Axios, Donald Trump Jr. said if former President Donald Trump doesn't win, it would be because of cheating. And obviously that is concerning from some who are worried that some of the same issues we saw play out in 2020 afterwards about sowing doubt about the proceedings is ringing true once again. So I asked Whatley whether he agrees with that statement.
We want to have a fair, accurate, secure, and transparent election cycle, and then we're going to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
And I followed up and I asked him, are you saying that if former President Donald Trump does not win, that the election proceedings are somehow rigged? And he said no, and he elaborated on that election integrity system that the RNC has put in place. But this is something that will continue to be ringing throughout these next few months going into November based on what we've heard from the former president. Now, we also touched on a number of other things, including the J.D. Vance's speech going into tonight, as you heard Taylor talk about. Michael Whatley said that you can expect this to be a very biographical speech, and talking about how this is basically the embodiment of American dreams. But look, as you look at the selection of Vance, former President Donald Trump could have chosen Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Tim Scott, senators with significant experience in Congress. But he chose someone with just 2 years of Senate experience. He says, given what we saw with Trump, the popularity going into 2016 and 2020, the lack of Washington experience is something that is ringing true in the Republican Party and seems to be a big selling point. And we've seen it not only on the presidential level, we've seen it on the Senate and the gubernatorial side as well. Typically, you came into the presidency and you had a lot of experience in the vice presidency, and that just is not the case as much as we're seeing in past times. And the other thing we got into was this issue of J.D. Vance and some of the comments he has said critical of Trump just a few years ago before he became president. I asked Whatley, I said, don't the ads by the Democrats pretty much write themselves considering some of these past comments? And look, as we have heard J.D. Vance say, they are not worried about that. They believe that that goes into what the Republicans have been saying, this idea of unity, hearing from Nikki Haley last night, hearing from Ron DeSantis, former opponents of Trump, who have now come around, despite what they have said, Trump going into November. So you can expect those ads to be on by Democrats, but it is going to be interesting to see how they respond to those from the Republican side. Harold?
Okay. Great reporting, Ruben. Thank you for that. Let's get some reaction to what we just heard from Whatley. Now, Tim Boyum, you know Michael Whatley from North Carolina. You've spoken to him about election integrity and other issues. What has he told you in the past?
Yeah, well, so this fair, accurate, secure, and transparent, we keep hearing those buzzwords over and over and over, and I've interviewed him many, many times about this. I've known him since he got on with the Trump campaign in North Carolina back in 2016, and they don't provide a lot of specifics on that, but I do push him further always by asking him, are North Carolina elections safe and secure? And he says yes. And the why, I think, gives us a little bit of insight of potentially what that means on a national level. So what have they done in North Carolina? What has he played a role in? Well, during the 2020 election, he made sure that there was a lawyer announce or do anything if they felt like there was anything wrong in the election there. They pushed for a number of state law changes in North Carolina. Republicans have supermajorities in North Carolina. There used to be a 3-day leeway period, essentially, for absentee votes to get in after Election Day. They changed that. Now it's got to be an in on Election Day. That was a huge deal for Republicans in North Carolina. And then also some laws allowing observers to be kind of closer to voters and part of the process on Election Day in North Carolina. So those are some of the things that he's helped or pushed in North Carolina to what they believe makes it safer and secure. Don't forget, he was general counsel for the RNC before he was chair. He's a lawyer at heart. And so I think that's a lot of behind what they think would make it fair, accurate, secure, and transparent.
Okay, thank you for that, Tim. Now, lawmakers were briefed today by the Secret Service and the FBI about Saturday's assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Holly, we've got only 1 minute, but I want to seem too pleased by what they heard.
No, not at all. This just seems like a cascading catastrophe of failures here. The more you hear about it, the worse it seems to get. And after that briefing, senators came out at 3 o'clock today, and some were upset. They felt like they weren't getting answers to the questions that they were asking. But evidently, Senator Mitch McConnell had heard enough that he tweeted that he thought the Secret Service director, it was time for new leadership there. Earlier in the day, Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, he said he will call for Kimberly Cheadle, the director, to step down. Here's a couple of the new nuggets of information. An hour before that shooting at the rally, security had the would-be assassin labeled as suspicious because he'd had a rangefinder on him, he was acting weird, and he had a backpack on him. So they then elevated the threat level on that would-be assassin to a threat, a direct threat. Let him take the stage. And how did he get up on that roof, which was uncovered? And the director of the Secret Service said because it was sloped, they didn't have an agent up there, and man, has that raised some eyebrows. So there's going to be a public meeting on this on Monday, Aaron.
Okay, more to come on that. Thank you, Holly. My thanks to the panel tonight. Taylor Popolars, Josh Robin, Jason Fechner, Holly Gregory, Tim Boyum, Alex Cohen, and Rena Diamante. And we thank you at home for watching. I'm Errol Lewis. We'll see you back here at 10 p.m. Eastern for live coverage of this third night of the Republican National Convention. More news right now on Spectrum.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matter. TV and connected devices, plus on-demand weather forecasts. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News Plus, local stories, connecting communities. Exclusively for Spectrum customers. Now available on your favorite devices.
At Spectrum, our workforce of over 100,000 employees are all located right here in the U.S. You can find them in our stores, in the field, and in our call centers with 100% U.S.-based customer service. Our team works hard to provide the towns, cities, and neighborhoods they live in with the reliable services that everyone counts on, making us one of America's most trusted companies. We're Spectrum, creating jobs and opportunities across the country, and proud to be 100% U.S.-based.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Never gonna let you go. Never gonna let
Sharon Tazwell. Here's your Spectrum News in 90. Day 3 of the Republican National Convention is underway in Milwaukee. Tonight's theme, Make America Strong once again. Donald Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, will deliver the headline address. He spoke earlier in the day for the first time since becoming the Republican vice presidential nominee.
We're going to get out there and try to fire up the crowd tonight and make the case, a very easy case to make, but an important case to make, that we have got to reelect President Donald J. Trump to the White House.
The director of the Secret Service has been subpoenaed to testify before the House Oversight Committee 4 days after the assassination attempt on Trump. Federal hearings are underway investigating security failures. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke publicly about the attempt for the first time Wednesday.
It was a heinous, horrible, and cowardly act. No one should have to fear for the safety of a loved one.
President Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. The White House says he is experiencing mild symptoms. Biden tested positive during a campaign trip to Las Vegas Wednesday. He has postponed a conference that was set to happen tonight. The White House says the president is vaccinated and boosted, and they said they'll also continue to keep everyone abreast of what's happening with Biden. Those are your headlines now. Here's your weather on the ones.
Hi there, I'm meteorologist Robert Santos. Weather's overnights becoming a little more comfortable for you out in the Northeast. Instead of 70s, we'll start off Thursday in the 60s. And during the day, instead of 90s, temperatures coming down into the 80s. More mild here right around the Great Lakes with 70s there in Milwaukee. Meantime, triple digits out in the Southwest. In fact, Southwest temperatures will start to come up. Now, we're going to start to track some thunderstorms for the South and across the Gulf and out towards the Carolinas for our Thursday. Excessive rainfall, slight chance of that.
All eyes on Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sharon Tazwell. The Ohio lawmaker is set to deliver the headline remarks during the third night of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Vance spoke briefly to the press earlier today during his first campaign event as a vice presidential nominee. Vance says he's going to make the case why Americans should look forward to another 4 years of a Trump presidency.
It is time to get rid of the corrupt Biden-Harris regime that has broken this country, that has ruined its reputation in the world, and most importantly, has made a basic middle-class life less affordable for our citizens.
Vance's remarks will set the stage for Trump, who is set to speak tomorrow night, wrapping up the 2024 RNC. The former president did a walkthrough earlier today ahead of the big Trump speaks since an assassination attempt during a campaign rally over the weekend. Our Taylor Popolars has been following all the big headlines from the RNC from inside the convention and joins us now. Taylor, it's a big night for J.D. Vance. What can we expect to hear from him tonight?
Good to be with you, Sharon. So I'm told that Vance will talk a lot about his own personal story and his biography. He was, of course, well known after that memoir he wrote, Hillbilly Elegy, was published in 2016 and became a big bestseller. There's even a Netflix movie based off of it. But this is a new opportunity to introduce himself to the country as a prominent politician who could be vice president if the election goes the way that he wants in November. So I'm told Vance will be talking a lot about his own personal story and his upbringing and trying to link his experience growing up in poverty in Southwest Ohio, but then finding success, to Donald Trump's campaign policies.
Definitely look forward to that speech. And Taylor, the Biden-Harris campaign says that Vice President Kamala Harris dates for a vice presidential debate. What can you tell us about that? And are we likely to see Vice President Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance square off?
We'll have to wait and see. The Biden campaign saying that Kamala Harris is open to 3 different dates between July and August, but we just got a response from the Trump campaign that kind of pokes fun at the Democrats' chaotic situation right now about Biden's age and abilities. They say, we don't know who the Democratic nominee for vice president is going to be, so we can't lock in a date before the convention. To do so would be unfair to Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Gretchen Whitmer, or whoever Kamala Harris picks as her running mate. So the Trump campaign throwing in a jab there that Joe Biden might not even be on the ticket, so they don't want to have a debate before then.
Wow. All right. Well, Taylor, tonight's theme is Make America Strong once again. What are speakers going to focus on in order to get that message out to voters?
So we expect to hear a good deal about foreign policy and how Republicans want to stop being involved in a lot of overseas wars and conflicts, and they want to focus on people like the mayor of East Palestine, Ohio, who, of course, oversaw that horrible toxic train derailment that took place last year that Senator J.D. Vance has responded to as the senator from that state. So I think it'll be a mix of foreign policy but also domestic policy and how Republicans envision kind of boosting things up in their perspective.